In the suburbs of D.C., a woman fails to show up for work and is found brutally murdered.
911, what's emergency? We just walked in the door and there's blood in the foyer.
For the next 2 decades, the case remained unsolved until new technology allowed investigators to do what had once been impossible. A new series from ABC Audio in 2020, Blood and Water. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
Are you trying to get weight loss support through telehealth, but it feels overwhelming and rushed? Check out orderlymeds.com now. Orderlymeds.com was built to be different. Here, you connect with real doctors who take the time to understand your goals, review your eligibility, and guide you through a plan that's right for you. Orderly Meds provides access to proven GLP-1 medications like semaglutide and tirzepatide, including both name brand options and personalized compound versions when appropriate. So you have choices backed by clinical oversight, not guesswork. It's a simpler, more supportive telehealth experience designed around people who want clarity, care, and confidence in their weight loss journey. And your medication is delivered directly to your home in discreet packaging, so your experience stays private from start to finish. Do your research, ask the right questions, then visit orderlymeds.com/podcast for an exclusive offer. Again, that's orderlymeds.com/podcast. Individual results may vary, not medical advice. Eligibility required. See site for details.
It's Christmas Eve, 2009. Most Queenslanders are spending the day at Currumbin or Coolangatta, Noosa. They're burned red from a week in the water already and arguing about whose turn it is to drive to the bottle-o before it closes. They're in backyards in Ipswich and Logan and Toowoomba, setting up the fold-out table, dragging the spare esky out from under the house, trying to remember where they put the extension cord for the fairy lights. Or if they're unlucky, they're in shopping centre car parks at 11 in the morning, circling Pacific Fair trying to find that elusive spot. They've still got presents to buy. Or maybe they're on their phone to their mums, sorting out the last minute details. Who's doing the path? In other words, they're doing what all Australians do on Christmas Eve. But Graham Stafford can't bring himself to engage in any of these types of activities. His day is on hold. In fact, his whole life, in a lot of ways, has been on hold since the morning of the 28th of September, 1991. The morning when police first slapped handcuffs on him. And it has remained on hold. Through the trial, through the conviction, through the first appeal and the High Court refusals, and the years of silence in between. He has, at least, been on parole for the last 3 years now. He's physically free, but legally still a convicted murderer. The verdict attached to his name wherever he goes. He has a partner, he has work. He's done a fine job, given the circumstances, to make a real go of things. But the weight of it all is well and truly back on his shoulders today. Because today, Christmas Eve 2009, 3 judges are deciding whether the conviction that has defined every day of Graham Stafford's life for the last 18 years should stand. They've been living with this case for months. The briefs, the transcripts, the expert evidence, the 18 years of legal history that have accumulated around the murder of a 12-year-old girl in Goodna. And we'll get to that decision on Christmas Eve 2009, later in the episode. But there's 12 years of ground to cover first, and none of it is simple. G'day, greetings from a rather crisp Tasmania. I'm your storyteller, Mark, and this is Struth, the show that covers the most perplexing mysteries that this country's ever seen. and this is part 2 of our investigation into the murder of Leanne Holland and the trial of Graham Stafford. If you've not listened to part 1, A Walk to the Shops, go back and start there. We've titled this episode, Not a Scintilla, and you'll see why pretty soon. This case was a request from Summer, so thanks again, Summer, for reaching out. If there's something that you would love to hear here on the show, make sure you send me an email, struthpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, make sure you hit like, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. And if you're after more episodes of Struth, why not come and join us over on Patreon at Struth Premium. The links are in the description of this show. But let's get back to our story. The Crown case against Graham Stafford was always built on a story. A beginning, a middle, an end. Stafford kills Leanne in the bathroom on Monday morning. He cleans up. He keeps the body in the boot of his car for 2 days. He dumps her in the bush on the Wednesday morning. Every piece of forensic evidence was made to fit that story. And the story gave the evidence its meaning. The blood in the boot, the maggot, the tyre impressions, the fact that the dumping occurred on the Wednesday morning was chosen purely because it was the first time in his timeline that Graham Stafford was not around other people. Without the story, these elements are just loose threads, but with it, they become a rope. The problem is that the story, in this case, is wrong. You heard in part 1 that in 1997 the Queensland Attorney General had referred Graham Stafford's case back to the Court of Appeal. New evidence had been placed before the court for the first time. Forensic scientist Leo Freeney had told them the murder almost certainly did not happen in the bathroom, and that the body was almost certainly never in that boot. Entomologist Beryl Morris had also come back to her own time of death estimates and revised them significantly. The Crown scenario was crumbling. One of the 3 appeal judges, Fitzgerald, had dissented. The jury convicted Stafford on a significantly mistaken version of evidence, he found. He would have quashed the conviction and ordered a retrial if it was up to him, and him alone. But he was outvoted. The other 2 judges held firm on the DNA blood evidence. Appeal dismissed. The door to freedom for Stafford opened just a smidge, and then it was slammed shut. He went back to prison to see out his time. So let's just focus on what that all means in practice. Fitzgerald, one of the most respected legal minds in Queensland, sat on that bench and read Freeney's evidence. And he read Morris's revised estimates and concluded that the jury convicted Graham Stafford on a version of events that never happened. This is not a minor detail, not a footnote. This was the foundation of the case. The murder taking place in the bathroom, the moving of the body to the boot, the disposal 2 days later. All of it was built on very shaky foundations, and those foundations had given away. And yet, the other 2 judges, while accepting that the scenario was wrong, looked at the DNA blood evidence and said, that's still enough. The blood on those 3 items in the boot, matching a type shared by 1 in 2 million people, points at Stafford regardless of where or how the killing happened. The rope, they said, still holds, even if half its strands are gone. That difference in opinion follows the case for another 12 years. But the Stafford side of the argument continues to gather weight. Small detail upon small detail, new supporter on top of new supporter, until that weight finally breaks the conviction wide open. To understand how that occurs, you need to understand how new evidence reaches a court after all conventional appeals have been exhausted. In Australia, the one remaining avenue after all seems lost is for a convicted person to petition the Attorney-General for a pardon. The Attorney-General can then refer the whole case back to the Court of Appeal to be heard and determined again as if it were a fresh appeal. This isn't a right, it's at the discretion of the Attorney-General, and it is rare. In summary, it's the last door available for someone who's run out of every other option. A kick from outside 50 after the siren. Stafford uses this approach in 2008. In his favour at that time is a decision that was made by the High Court in 2005. In the case of Mallard versus the Queen, a Western Australian wrongful conviction case with striking parallels to Stafford's, the High Court said something that would prove decisive. On an Attorney-General's reference, a Court of Appeal is not merely reviewing whether there was a significant possibility of acquittal. It is required to conduct a full review of all the evidence and reach its own view of the case. The court has to decide for itself. So the 2008 court looks at everything. And by 2008, there is considerably more for that court to look at. Independent forensic investigator Robin Napper examines the chain of custody of the original exhibits, and what he finds is deeply uncomfortable. The officer who collected the key forensic evidence from the crime scene was not wearing gloves. He moved between 3 separate crime scenes on the same day without changing protective clothing. The sponge with the hair on it was found only on a second examination by a different forensic technician after the original officer had already handled the scene. The sports bag with Leanne's blood on it in the boot of the Gemini was never assigned an exhibit number. There are also unresolved questions about where it was stored between collection and analysis and who had access to it in the interim. Napper's conclusion is that the integrity of the trace evidence cannot be assumed. And remember, it was this DNA blood evidence that the other 2 appeal judges held on to. It was this evidence predominantly that kept Stafford in prison after his appeal. And then there's the maggot. 3 new entomological experts examine the evidence independently. Their findings converge. A single maggot is an unreliable basis for any time of death estimate. But one expert, Dr. Wallman, goes even further. The maggot was described in police records as dark-coloured and alive. Dr. Wallman gives evidence that a live maggot of this species would be cream-coloured. A dark maggot would be dead or at the pupal stage and therefore completely immobile, not alive and wriggling as the records describe. The description does not match a live maggot or a pupal one. It does not match either thing that the maggot could actually be. And there are also questions about the labelling. The maggot from the boot was delivered in a vial labelled number 3. The maggots from the body were in vials numbered 1 and 2. The numbering suggests, logically, that the boot maggot was collected after the body maggots. The police timeline says the opposite, and nobody has a satisfactory explanation for this discrepancy. The court hears all of it. The hearings run through 2008 and into 2009. 3 judges, months of submissions and evidence. 18 years of a case being turned over and examined from every angle. And then, on Christmas Eve 2009, they hand down their decision. The majority judgment is written by Justice Patrick Keane. He'll later serve on the High Court of Australia. But on this particular Christmas Eve, he's writing the most consequential judgment of Graham Stafford's life. What Justice Keane finds is this: At trial, the jury were told by the Crown prosecutor and then by the trial judge that the scenario was a view of the facts fairly open to them on the evidence. The bathroom, the boot, the 2 days, the Wednesday morning drive to Redbank Plains. That was the case they were invited to accept. It has now been established, comprehensively and without serious challenge, that that scenario was plainly wrong. And here is the legal point that changes everything. If the scenario presented was wrong, the jury should have never been invited to accept it. The Crown prosecutor should not have advocated for it. The trial judge should not have presented it as a fair view of the evidence. The jury, in this way, was misled. Not through anyone's dishonesty, but through the presentation of a theory that collapsed the moment it was properly tested. And because they were misled, Graham Stafford was denied the trial he was entitled to. And that, Keane finds, is a miscarriage of justice. Not in the sense that the evidence can't sustain a conviction, in the deeper sense that the process itself failed. Justice Fraser agrees with Justice Keane. Justice Holmes, the third member of the panel, goes further still. She looks at all the available evidence and reaches her own conclusion. A properly instructed jury, presented with the real case without the false scenario propping it up, could not, in her view, be satisfied beyond reasonable doubt that Graham Stafford murdered Leanne Holland. She would not order a retrial. She would enter a verdict of acquittal. She was of the belief that this should all end, right here, right now. Stafford's name should have been properly and completely cleared. But she was outvoted, 2-1. So the majority order, conviction, quashed, but a retrial ordered. Outside, Queenslanders are in a backyard somewhere, arguing on a Christmas Eve about questionable LB verdicts in backyard cricket. Inside, Graham Stafford finally has his answer. But that retrial, as it turns out, never happens. Further evidential reviews are conducted, and in April 2014 the Director of Public Prosecutions confirms no retrial. To justify this decision, they cite the time already served, the terrible state of the evidence that remains, and also that a retrial is not in the public interest. And so, officially, at that point, nobody killed Leanne Holland. But in private, Queensland Police have a rather different view, and they're already working diligently on a report that says so. So here is what you might have expected to happen next. The conviction collapses. The DPP declines to retry. And Queensland Police, confronted with the harsh reality that the man they put away for 15 years may not have done it, begin a genuine search for who did. They follow the threads that were never followed in 1991. They look at the neighbourhood, the caravan park, the corridor of violence that runs along Ipswich Road. They ask the question plainly, if not Stafford, then who? But, dear listeners, that is not what happens next. In 2010, the Queensland Police Service commences an internal cold case review. It's 2 years long. They carry out advanced forensic retesting of the house at 70A Alice Street. They compile a report 500 pages long, and at the end of it, in December 2012, Assistant Commissioner Mike Condon stands in front of the media and delivers the finding. There is, he says, not a scintilla of evidence implicating anyone other than Graham Stafford. Not a scintilla. 2 years of thorough review, a 500-page report, and not even the smallest amount of evidence that it was someone else.
The GLP-1 pill you've been waiting for is now on Ro. Yep, it's finally here. With the same clinically proven ingredient. Now in a pill. And now on Ro. It's the first FDA-approved GLP-1 pill for weight loss. At the lowest price available. That's one daily GLP-1 pill for big results. Now on Ro. Go to ro.co/listen to see if you qualify. RX only. Go to ro.co/safety for serious side effects and boxed warning associated with GLP-1s.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
The review had found new things. New technology applied to the bathroom found that Leanne's blood had projected upwards in the shower. Police say there was evidence she was partway through dyeing her hair when the process inexplicably stopped, and they argue that this places her in the house at the moment of an attack. The house that only she and Stafford were in. The maggot examined again still matches. Imprints on her body too, they say, are consistent with the mat in the boot of a car of Stafford's type. So in essence, they double down. Stafford is their man, and they've got evidence that proves it. But, like everything in this case, things seem a little off. The public at this time hears only what's said in Condon's press conference. And that 500-page report that apparently supports his conclusion, well, it's immediately classified as confidential. Queensland Police will not release it. Not to the public, not to the media, not even to Graham Stafford's lawyers. The man the report is about cannot read it. What follows is 7 years of legal attrition. Stafford's lawyers lodge a right to information application in September 2014. It's refused. They seek external review from the Office of the Information Commissioner, but the OIC sides with the police. They appeal to QCAT, the Queensland Civil and Administrative Tribunal. And in May 2019, QCAT allows the appeal, but the police appeal that decision. And finally, in September 2020, a heavily redacted, partial copy is finally handed over. The full report, which importantly includes the other 15 persons of interest. It includes the review's actual findings and its considerations, stays buried. 7 long years of fighting to read a report about yourself. And at the end of it, most of the pages are still blacked out. But in 2017, someone inside Queensland Police has had enough. A copy of the report is leaked to Channel 7, which airs a program about the case. Queensland Police call themselves the victims of the leak. Former Supreme Court Judge Anthony Wheely describes the whole episode quite differently. He says publicly that it is disgraceful for police to announce that a man is guilty on the basis of a report they refuse to show anyone. It smacks, he says, of sour grapes. The leak, as you could imagine, generates national coverage, but it fails to generate an inquest. For more than 30 years, the fight for an inquest has run almost entirely on the energy of one man. Graham Crowley is a former Queensland Police detective who turned to private investigation and has worked the case without payment since 1992. He's written books, produced podcasts, given interviews, hired experts. and named names. There's plenty of links to his work in the show notes, and I thoroughly recommend having a look for yourself. He's been joined along the way by criminologist Paul Wilson from Bond University, barrister Joe Crowley, Courier Mail journalist Daryl Giles, and broadcaster Greg Carey. They're not a formal organisation by any means. They're just a group of people who looked at this case and could not look away, and have been very vocal for a long time. And what Crowley has always demanded is that coronial inquest. In Queensland, a coroner can compel evidence. They can put witnesses under oath and make formal findings about how and why a person died. In 35 years, that has never happened. Attorneys General have refused it time after time. The state coroner has declined. The official position has been, in essence, that the case is closed. Graham Stafford did it, and the review confirmed it. But Graham Crowley has never accepted that the case is closed. Not for a single day of the 30 years he's worked it. Because here is the question that the Queensland Police Service has never seriously tried to answer. If Graham Stafford did not kill Leanne Holland, somebody else did. And that somebody was in or around Goodna on the morning of Monday, the 23rd of September, 1991. They knew the area. They may have known Leanne. And when Graham Stafford was arrested 5 days after her body was found, they watched it and said nothing. And they've been free ever since. Crowley's investigation has identified 4 men he believes deserve serious scrutiny. Not convicted killers, not names plucked from the air. Men with specific connections to the time, the place or the crime itself. Men whose details in one case include knowledge of the scene that was never made public. Men who, in Crowley's view, were never properly investigated because police decided on day one that they already had their man. Here is what we know about Leanne Holland's last meal. She leaves 78 Alice Street at around 9:30. A reliable witness sees her at the Goodna shops at around 10 o'clock, walking away. After that, she vanishes. She does not reach Tricia Lynch at the caravan park. She does not reach the hairdresser. And she does not come home. Somewhere between those shops and safety, someone takes her and eventually takes her life. The neighbourhood matters here in ways that have never been fully examined. Goodna in 1991 is a small, close-knit community. The Gales Caravan Park is less than a kilometre from Alice Street. Leanne walks over there regularly to catch up with Tricia. She knows the faces, or at least she thought she did, because someone in or around this area was capable of extraordinary violence. What follows is Graham Crowley's investigation and its findings. These are theories, not verdicts. Nobody has been charged in connection with the death of Leanne Holland, and we say that once, clearly, and it covers each of the 4 suspects that follow, all of whom should be presumed innocent until proven guilty. Sean Peter McPhedran. 3 weeks after Leanne Holland was murdered, a 12-year-old girl named Julianne Lowe was killed at Woogaroo Creek in Goodna. 3 weeks, same suburb, same age. The man convicted of Julianne Lowe's murder was an 18-year-old named Sean Peter McPhedran. He was, at the time, a resident of the Gales Caravan Park, the same caravan park where Leanne's best friend, Tricia Lynch, lived, the same park Leanne visited regularly. He was one of those familiar faces in Goodna in September 1991. According to Crowley's investigation materials, he had schizophrenia, and he's been in custody for Lowe's murder since 1991. Graham Crowley has argued for years that the coincidence is too great to leave unexamined. Two 12-year-old girls, 3 weeks apart, less than a kilometre between the locations. The 2012 QPS review examined McPhedran as one of 15 persons of interest. What the review concluded about him, nobody outside Queensland Police can say. The relevant pages about him remain redacted. McPhedran is a convicted murderer, not for Leanne Holland's attack, but for the one on Julianne Lowe. And his presence in Goodna at the relevant time is not in dispute. The second suspect was Mark Thomas Noble. Mark Noble was a violent career offender living in Brisbane in 1991. He was later convicted of murder in Hobart in 2005, and he died in 2017. The detail that brought him to Crowley's attention came from years after Leanne's death. According to Crowley, Noble told a girlfriend in around 2001 or 2002 that he had killed a young girl in Brisbane's western suburbs. He described the location as being near some beehives. Leanne Holland's body was found down a track leading to a set of beehives off Red Bank Plains Road. According to Crowley, that detail was not in the public domain at the time. It was not in the newspapers. It was not the kind of thing a person would know unless they had been there. If Noble's alleged statement is accurately reported by his girlfriend, it describes knowledge he should not have had. Crowley has placed this at the centre of his case against Noble. But as we mentioned, Noble is deceased and he cannot be questioned. He can't defend himself against the claims of a former girlfriend. He was never charged in connection with Leanne's death, and every detail in this section comes from Crowley's private investigation, not from any court proceeding or official finding. It is presented right here as the theory that it is. Again though, I think it's fair to say another lead that demanded further investigation by those who were charged with doing so. The third suspect was a man who became known as Pedo Pete. This is a man in Crowley's investigation whose real name has never been made public. Crowley refers to him only by this pseudonym, Pedo Pete. According to Crowley's account, this man was known at the time to the Holland family. He had prior convictions for child sexual offences. He had also, at various times, acted as a police informant, a detail that Crowley argues may have protected him from scrutiny. In 1997, 2 of his daughters came to Crowley independently. They didn't know at the time that each other had done so, but they both told him they believed their father was responsible for Leanne's death. In 2020, this man was charged with raping his 12-year-old granddaughter. Again, this is Crowley's account of what he investigated. The man's never been publicly named, and he appears to still be living. We're not going to go any further into the details because going further is something we can't do fairly to an unnamed individual on the basis of an unverified private investigation. But the threat exists. Crowley has documented it thoroughly. And finally, we move on to Raymond Peter Mulvihill. In October 2017, Queensland Police Detective Inspector Damien Hanson stood at a press conference and named Raymond Peter Mulvihill. Mulvihill, he said, was the man Queensland Police would have arrested if he was still alive for the 1986 disappearance and murder of Sharon Phillips. Mulvihill had been a taxi driver. He had lived in 1991 at 49 Russell Drive, Red Bank Plains, the same suburb where Leanne's body was found. He had operated out of Wakehole Station Road, a short drive from where Sharon Phillips disappeared. He died of cancer in 2002. At that same press conference, Detective Inspector Hanson confirmed that police had examined whether Mulvihill had any connection to Leanne Holland's death. Their conclusion was that he did not. He gave no further information on this part of the matter. The Sharon Phillips case eventually reached a coronial inquest, with findings delivered by State Coroner Terry Ryan in May 2024. The inquest heard in detail from Mulvihill's son Ian Seeley, who gave evidence about a deathbed confession and described his own presence on the night of Sharon Phillips' disappearance. The coroner examined Seeley's account carefully, and he found serious inconsistencies. He found that Seeley's credibility was significantly undermined by the way his story changed across multiple tellings. His conclusion was that the evidence was not sufficient to find that Mulvihill had played a role in Sharon's disappearance. No finding was made against Mulvihill. No finding was made against Seeley. Sharon Phillips has never been found. She vanished on the night of the 8th of May 1986. In 2024, 38 years later, the cause of her death is recorded officially as undetermined, and the identity of the person responsible cannot be established. So, where does all of this leave us? Where does the case sit now? In February 2024, Channel 9 revisits the case on their show Under Investigation with Liz Hayes. As part of the show, independent forensic scientists Bob Mee and James Spears examine the claims from the 2012 report, and what they find is striking. The blood in the shower. The 50 spots the review claims as projected blood yields conclusive DNA on exactly one spot. The rest contains amounts so small they barely register. The hair dye evidence too, they find, just doesn't stand up any type of scrutiny. The body imprint claim that was made in the report, where they said that Leanne's body contained an imprint from an article that was from Greg Stafford's boot, was not assessed by a qualified impressions expert, but instead by a forensic photographer, whose comparison, Mee and Spears note, would not be accepted in court. Asked directly whether there is a single piece of evidence in the review that gives Graham Stafford a case to answer, their answer is unambiguous. No, they completely contradict the findings of the 2012 report. Also, in this Under Investigation episode, Stafford submits voluntarily to independent forensic testing and a polygraph. The results do not give Queensland Police anything new to work with. Crowley continues his campaign. He writes another book. He writes formally to the coroner, seeking legal advice from a retired chief magistrate in support of the argument that an inquest is legally required. And then, on Tuesday the 22nd of April 2026, a letter arrives. Acting State Coroner Stephanie Gallagher writes to Graham Crowley to tell him that she has directed, under Section 50B of the Coroners Act 2003, that the investigation into Leanne Holland's death be reopened. Deputy State Coroner Donald McKenzie will be in charge of this reinvestigation. Crowley says that he believes police had originally opposed an inquest, but changed their position. Whether or not that's true, a coroner has formally acted for the first time in 35 years. 500 pages, 15 persons of interest, 35 years. A coronial investigation that has only just begun. The question has never been answered, but it has been asked persistently for 3 decades by people who will not let it go. If not Graham Stafford, then who? Struth. If you have any information about this case, you can get hold of Crime Stoppers anonymously on 1800 333 000 here in Australia, or if you're overseas, crimestoppers.com.au. Thanks again for listening to what was a pretty tricky case to cover here on Struth, but I think it's a story that needs to be heard. It seems to me that a lot of people have been dealt with really poorly in this case. First and foremost, Leanne Holland, her family, and of course, Graham Stafford. In addition, there is still a killer wandering the streets if it wasn't Graham Stafford who committed this crime. Next week, something perhaps a bit lighter, but at the same time bloody terrifying, if I'm honest. We're going to be having a look at the Junjity, or Brown Jack, an Australian mystery with a very, very long history. If you'd like to hear that episode right now, though, you can join us over on Struth Premium. There's links in the show notes. Struth Premium will give you ad-free early access to all of our regular feed, and in addition, you get one bonus episode each week. Some of those bonus episodes are our Struth Abroad cases. In recent weeks, we've covered the Diatlov Pass, the RM Qualtro mystery, and the Flannan Lighthouse as well. We also delve into Australian cases that don't appear on this show. Thanks again for listening. I'll catch you next week.